Well, all eyes, of course, in Ottawa, official Ottawa, are on the Mike Duffy trial. But the man I'm with now, Michael Spratt, says, don't get too excited. Michael, you are a defense lawyer here in the Capitol, and you're not too sure that we're going to get all that excited about what comes out of this.
No, I mean, it's a 41-day trial, and 28 of the counts deal with fraud. And if you ask any defense lawyer what the least interesting charge there is in the criminal code, the answer is going to be fraud. Bankers' boxes of documents, rules, regulations, procedures. That's not normally the stuff that we get really excited about. And, there might be a tidbit here or there because of the political intrigue, but legally speaking, it might not be a very exciting trial.
All right, so, by the way, we're meeting here at Deacon Brodie Pub on Elgin Street, around the corner from the trial, just to get away from some of the insanity. But, Michael, just to be clear for people, I want them to understand that you're not a conservative stalwart that is out to defend Mike Duffy here. You and I have sparred on Twitter over the years. Are you a conservative?
In some respects, but I think you could describe me as sort of left-leaning. I'm not a member of any political party. I take a bit from everything, but
you're not out defending Duffy and Harper at every turn.
No, I think that's a fair comment.
Okay. So, because I read your op-ed in the National Post the other day, and then I've been watching what's been coming out, and you've been banged on. You wrote that before the trial started, correct?
That's right. And I mean, we have seen some hints of some what could be political intrigue, but
that's not central to the charge.
It's not central to the charge. That might be a bit of theater that's being put on, and ultimately it may not be in the defense's interest to really start throwing a lot of mud in this case.
Okay, yeah, let's get to that point in a minute. But I mean, I'm thinking about the fight between Peter MacKay and former Harper spokesman, now Liberal stalwart Dimitri Soudis. I mean, that coming out that MacKay thought Dimitri Soudis leaked the helicopter story to him. That actually has nothing to do with the trial, but that's one of the most fascinating things to come out of the Mike Duffy diaries.
And the fascinating point is that's in diaries submitted by the Crown and not even the defense. So it doesn't really bear on the trial at all. I mean, the 28 counts about fraud are about what the legal rules were, what the rules in the Senate were. We know Duffy claimed what he claimed, and it's just, did he have a fraudulent intent when he did it? A very simple legal question that ultimately, in most cases, doesn't get very much press.
How important in a fraud trial is the question of intent?
It's centrally important. I mean, especially in this case. I mean, we know Duffy claimed what he claimed when he claimed it. The real issue is, did he do so knowing that it was wrong, or should he have known that it was wrong? Did he do so fraudulently, but did he do so with a criminal intent to actually perpetrate a fraud?
Now, I can point to senators who have been appointed from different provinces but lived in Ottawa for years, going back decades. Does that, in a fraud trial like this, does that bear any weight? Does that hold anything for the defense in saying, well, he didn't mean to do it, and look, it's been going on like this for the past 30, 40, 50 years?
Well, certainly it doesn't seem that Mr. Duffy was very secretive about any of this. I mean, when he claimed these expenses, he claimed it. It wasn't under-the-table cash payments. It was, official receipts that were submitted. Everyone knows where he lived. And I mean, the most interesting part about this residency thing, the technical legal part, is he was appointed as a senator from PEI. So either he was living in PEI and that was his residence. I mean, and living might be an oversimplification because the Senate rules don't even say that you have to live there.
They don't even say you have to live in the property that you own there.
No, and I mean, when you look at the sort of the laundry list of, factors that could be considered, it's, things like, do you pay taxes there? Do you have a driver's license there? Do you go to church there? Do you bowl there? So, I mean, it's so murky that it could go either way, and it ultimately may not be that interesting. Either he's from PEI and is a resident there, in which case, at least in respect of the residency claims, he seems to have a pretty good defense, or the Prime Minister made an unconstitutional appointment to the Senate.
Yeah, which, again, is widely open to interpretation. I think the part where Mike Duffy could get in more trouble are these allegations around making payments to various contractors through a friend of his. That, I don't know the legal aspects of it, but looking at what's been presented so far, that could be more problematic because I don't see an out there yet. And if as a layman I can see an out on the fraud, then that's reasonable doubt.
Yeah, I mean, reasonable doubt's a really high standard, but he could be in trouble with some of those other payments. But that's something that we see in court all the time. The only reason why that's noteworthy is because it's, Mr. Duffy, and there's not necessarily anything even political there. So in some respects, if you're looking for a smoking gun, at least in this first half of the trial that's dealing with the fraud charges, about, backroom political dealings or, anti-conservative, sentiment or anything like that, I don't think you're going to find it.
Now, as far as the slinging mud goes, lots of people expect that Mike Duffy will start throwing mud at Nigel Wright in the Prime Minister's office. And as a defense lawyer, you say you doubt that's going to happen, and explain why.
Now, I may be proven wrong on that because in sort of this, exceptionally unusual opening statement that Duffy's lawyer, Don Bain, gave, an hour and a half, sort of a closing argument cloaked as an opening statement, there was a bit of talk about sort of a conspiracy that was going on, but it's a bit of a risky legal strategy because we know that Nigel Wright's going to say that he gave the $90,000 to reimburse the taxpayers, to make sure the taxpayer was made whole, and for, in good faith. He had bona fides in giving that money to Duffy. And so what's Duffy's options? He could cross-examine Nigel Wright on that point, and there certainly is, things to cross-examine him on. If it was a good faith payment, why was it done secretly? Why are these backroom discussions about it? Why are there quid pro quos? But it might not be in Duffy's interest necessarily to start throwing that mud, because the bigger conspiracy that he makes out of this, the more he ropes himself into a conspiracy instead of just a simple good faith gesture to reimburse taxpayers.
So trying to drag down PMO could end up dragging down himself.
Yeah, often when you throw mud in court, there's inevitably going to be some splashback, and it's a cost-benefit analysis that the defense lawyer has to do about, how much mud are you willing to have splash back on you, and what's the cost and benefit there.
All right, we've already seen some of the media people tweeting about how bored they are in court, 41-day trial. Do you think that the media attention is going to stick for the entire time?
I mean, I think the media's got a grandstand set up outside. There's infrastructure that's being built, so there's going to be coverage throughout this whole thing. I think you're going to see it sort of die off during the latter half of this first bit of the trial, and then ramp back up, and maybe even exceed what we've seen the moment Nigel Wright starts walking towards the court.
Nigel Wright's going to be huge. I'll agree with that. And then after the trial wraps up, we're going to have to wait for a verdict. How long do these things typically take? I haven't covered a fraud trial like this before, but I know murder trials, terror trials, Supreme Court cases, they can take a long time.
Yeah, the turnaround time could be, quite lengthy. And I mean, one of the interesting things is that there's no jury here. This is a judge-alone trial. And that was a big decision by the defense, too. By giving up a jury and by keeping the case in the lower court, they lose the ability to have a preliminary inquiry, sort of a little hearing before the trial to examine some of the evidence. But one of the things they do gain is speed. And I don't know if that's sort of a happy coincidence or maybe part of the strategy, but by electing a judge alone in the lower courts, that's why this trial is happening before the election. Now, the judge can have as much time as he wants to craft a decision, and after 41 days, it might take him quite a while. So we could be looking at a decision in the summer or fall, creeping awfully close to the election.
You think it'll come before the election, or a good chance?
If I was a betting man, and I sometimes am, I'd say yeah.
Okay. All right, Michael Spratt, thanks so much.
Good talking to you.